Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Riderflex podcast. Along with our daily tips on career advice, our show features entrepreneurs, business owners, executives, and influencers from all types of industries, sharing their stories, providing advice based on their experiences, and chatting about their companies. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, you can email us at podcast@riderflex.com. And if you like today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and give us a quick thumbs up. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Bob Hall on the Riderflex podcast. Hi, Bob. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. Where are you at today? Are you in Golden? Are you in the office, or where are you?
I am at Outrider's global headquarters in Golden, Colorado, right at the base of North Table Mountain.
Very nice, beautiful area. You know, we're recording this on February 1st, 2022. Got some snow coming in tonight. I'm sure you know that.
Can't wait. I look at open snow and the snow forecast pretty religiously. So I am one of those folks who loves driving in the snow. Can't wait to commute in a couple inches of fresh powder. So
what do you drive? You driving like a Jeep? You're driving a 4Runner? What do you got?
Well, right now I'm driving the family cruiser. It's a Land Cruiser. And we got it so that it could handle the outdoors and a lot of, kids and a lot of gear in the back and bikes and skis and everything else. So that's the commuter vehicle for now.
Tell me about your family. Tell me about your wife and kids, and give us some overview there if you don't mind.
Man, they're so great. We could talk this whole podcast about Victoria, my wife of 7.5 years. Vivian, my soon to be 6-year-old. She was born on February 13th. We thankfully missed Valentine's Day, so she's not going to be scarred with that the rest of her life. And my 2.5-year-old son, Alexander. They're just so much fun. We've got a family ritual in the winter. We go up to the mountains and we ski. Victoria and I drop Vivian off at ski school, and then Victoria and I ski together. Alexander is still kind of in babysitting phase, but we do bring him on the magic carpet. The kid's a little animal. He's just got good gross motor and stands up on skis and just wants to whiz down the mountain. But we're doing it once every couple of weeks with him. But
very
really
nice.
Love the mountains and the outdoors.
Where's your family from? Your mom and dad?
I'm a little bit of a mutt. So I grew up, my mom's from Southern California. My dad's from Long Island, from New York. And I have, her side of the family, a lot of California, a lot of Southern California, dad's side of the family, Northeast. And I grew up in both areas. Born in San Francisco, was there till I was 5. Dad was a finance guy, so got transferred to the New York area, and I spent a good chunk of childhood in the New York metro area in Connecticut. And then we moved back to California when I was around middle school. Again, a job change thing, and, being near family, either my mom's side or my dad's side, were the anchors of those moves. So, but I don't really have a hometown that I can say I kind of grew up in consistently for the years in my youth.
Are your mom and dad still married? They're still alive, or what's the story?
Yeah, they are married and alive, and they are really cute couple. They are, I often get the feedback from friends. They're very sweet. They love their kids a lot. Grew up, my sister and I, together, and have a half brother. But my parents are very happy. They live in San Diego. My dad still, gets out there, does triathlons and biathlons. He's
really
80. He's probably not getting his PRs anymore, but he's getting out there. He's a tough guy. And my mom's a gardener, and she's a member of the Rose Society down there. And so they're pretty active and healthy folks, and they host us every year at Thanksgiving. So
that's great. Was your dad or mom, were they Ivy Leaguers as well? Because I know you went to Princeton, and so what's the story there? Were they you just kind of follow their path? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, dad was an Ivy Leaguer a couple times. Got it, came up, did it, got an MBA, and then spent his whole career in finance. My mom, both of them are really interesting and inspiring, and were great role models for just sort of my focus on education and studying growing up. My mom is a voracious reader, literally like 5, 6, 7 books a week. And she's been doing that for the past 50, 60, 70 years. And I grew up with seeing that. And she, during her college years, she actually spent a year going to college when she was younger, dropped out. And then she put herself through college when I was in elementary school.
Really?
We lived in Connecticut, and she decided I'm going to get a bachelor's degree. I'm not going to, go through life without a college education. And she went to college at State University of New York, SUNY, at Purchase, which was in Westchester County, a short drive away from where we lived.
Oh.
And I grew up seeing her studying. She wrote a senior thesis. This was back in the 80s when we had an IBM PC, and she was stressing about printing out her 90-page thesis on the dot matrix printer. And it was so formative because she was just immersed in books. And it's sort of like, you sort of, as a parent, you want to model behaviors for your kids, but as a kid, you see these behaviors and they just become kind of part of you. And that was, at the time it was like, oh, mom's studying, we should study. But as an adult, I look back on that, I'm like, wow, total respect. I mean, she's raising 2 kids and studying like crazy and did exceptionally well. She graduated summa. And so that was just so inspiring to sort of digest that, that kind of parental experience that she went through.
Where'd your dad go to school?
He went to Princeton.
Okay, he went to Princeton. So you followed him. Okay, great. Very good. Well, congratulations, by the way, getting into Princeton, even if your dad went there, that's a big deal. So congrats. Plus, didn't you get your MBA from Dartmouth?
Got it from Dartmouth. Decided I wanted to go back and sharpen the blade and, build the toolkit and all those, cliches about what an MBA brings you. And it certainly delivered. 2
Plus,
years.
you were active in Princeton, weren't you, on the road team? And talk to me about some of the athletics.
Yeah, that was a really big part of my, growing up. I played all the, the ball sports, football, basketball, baseball. I was a big kid. I stopped growing when I was in 8th grade. Showed up in 9th grade and got me into rowing, and I became a competitive rower in high school, and then rowed in college.
Gotcha. All right.
And had big aspirations. We did really well as a team, and that twice a day, 5, 6 days a week training through my entire college years. It was really exciting because Princeton was pretty good, but never really kind of made it before we got there. And then we, turned them into a national champion, and it was just an exceptional experience. And I'm still very close friends with everyone who's part of that, who was part of that.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, those things you cherish. I mean, you'll remember those moments for the rest of your life, right? I love the fact that you have that on your LinkedIn profile too. I think it's fantastic. Anytime I'm talking to somebody and they played or any kind of sport or, athletics in college, whether it's Ivy League, D1, D2, that's a big deal. I mean, because, it takes a lot of energy and determination and so forth to do that while you're going to school. So I can respect that. Yeah. Congrats on that, by the way. Very nice.
Thank you.
You probably got you got some pictures in your office, I'm sure, all that good stuff.
Pictures are of children. I feel like it's a little, I've got the pictures of rowing and, athletics at home, but not still getting comfortable putting, all of my, personal kind of relics or artifacts around my desk. But I am very proud of it, and there's a lot of memorabilia at home.
Let me ask you this. Were you always just a straight A kid, never got in
No.
trouble? Or were you, was there anything in there where you're like, you had the sheriff's department called your dad and he had to come get you? Anything fun? Anything interesting?
I was always a good student growing up, and then I became I was a pretty good student after that. I went to I was in the midst of very, very, crushingly difficult academics in high school, and some very brilliant, very talented people. So I went from, as a lot of people do when they get into like, a really competitive institution, they find that, they were really good in their sort of minor league background or their, their bush league background, but then they go to the majors and they're like, wow, everyone is just an absolute, absolutely accomplished. But I was pretty good, and a lot of it was around things that inspired me, and a little bit of the sort of the business kind of top, as I got a little older, and when the curriculum really expanded, kind of tore a page from my dad's background and wanted to learn about business and economics and finance. And from my mom majored in history when she put herself back through college. And so just got really excited about, transformative periods in world and US history.
Was your dad an entrepreneur, or was he just a finance guy, or did he invest?
He
was CFO. Okay. All right.
I actually remember some, and I don't remember him too well, so I don't have lots of details and like great nuggets to share, but I do remember him. We talked about this, and we talked about what it was like, what it's like being a CFO and why he liked that, and why he didn't, why, he wasn't an entrepreneur. And we talked about risk and getting comfortable with, with what you're great at and what inspires you, but also making sure it fits with how much risk you want to take on, whether in in the narrow context of a job or the larger context of, life choices. So he, those were, but he was a CFO, and, was a really good one. And there were a lot of lessons and stuff you pick up, like every kid picks up about their parents' work, that sort of just informs your judgment and your choices, and how you think about the place of, how the role work plays in your life and your sort of personal progression.
When you first stepped out and made a couple of investments or started getting involved with startup, was he like, what the hell are you doing? Like, no, just go get a regular job.
My dad, it's interesting. The parenting philosophies were a study in contrasts. My dad, laissez-faire, let the kids figure it out. Okay. Like they can just fail, and they'll just, fail in the sense of falling off a log or, landing wrong on a trampoline, like that kind of failure, as well as, failing, and failing is just used broadly, by the way. It doesn't necessarily mean like fail in capital F, or grade fail. But my dad was kind of like, you're going to figure it out. Like, you got good education and you've got all the tools you need, and let me know when you want some advice or feedback. And then it was like, you're off. My mom growing up, was stricter and was the rule enforcer, and had a very, very high bar on sort of behavior and, my comportment and decorum. So they were two things. One was the structure, and one was, interesting. You can almost see how they, like, writ large, they manifest themselves in, in how in corporate governance, or in, in the political structures. One was sort of, the, like, let the states choose, and one was the, the federal government was sort of there. My dad was states, in sort of that kind of represented some of his political background, and my mom was the federal. She had like the rules. She would get involved. She would provide those course corrections or that immediate feedback. And my dad was like, you will learn through experience, you will learn through successes and failures. And it was a great mix.
Yes, absolutely. That shaped you a bunch, I'm sure. How did you, before we get into your career, I want to do that, but first, how'd you meet your wife?
I met her in San Francisco. Actually an ex-girlfriend introduced us, an ex-girlfriend who we became friends, and we really liked and respected each other. And I think she just got inspired. She had met Victoria in another, in another social setting. And I think she was like, Bob Hall should meet this woman. So she introduced us. It turns out she introduced us while Victoria was very spoken for. But then, timing for a number of reasons didn't work out at that point. And then we met up about a year later, and it was just the connection was
immediate spark. Like it was just the energies there.
It was there originally, but it was just one of those things where it was just complicated, and fate, circumstances intervened. And then, but a year later, it was, it was almost like an out of body experience. I kind of, those times when you yourself are experiencing something, but you also kind of can see yourself experiencing it, and you're sort of witnessing it like a third party. That was when I connected with my wife, and when, after, and when we stayed together afterward, I felt like that. It was like, I'm watching myself meet my wife, my future wife. And it did feel like destiny. I know it's so cornball to say that, but that was that experience, and it was wonderful. And it was really something I was hoping I would find sometime in my life. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I waited and for the right moment. And
very good. Were you close? Were you close before? Were you serious with somebody? Did you almost get married before, or anything like that? Or
I had serious relationships, and then I, sprinkled with, some short, some long periods of being a bachelor.
Yeah. You learn a lot during those times, right? You learn, like, when you're a young man, you go through a few relationships, you really start to learn how to manage relationships properly, take care of your partner. Whew, man. I think back about all the stupid things I did with my first marriage, or it's like, whew, it's
right.
good.
Yeah. And I really learned from some of the serious girlfriends I had that, I learned a heck of a lot from, in terms of how to be responsible for someone else and not just yourself. I mean, that sort of transformation you go through after you graduate from college. Before then, you are just so self-absorbed and focused on your or at least a lot of people are, not everyone. I feel like I was very focused on my own goals and my own progression, and I didn't get out of my own head. And I don't think in bad ways or, societally unproductive ways, but like being in a, long-term relationships, you're all of a sudden, you kind of recast your set of priorities and sort of the expectations you set for yourself on how you want to behave and treat others. And it was, marvelous training for getting me ready for the big, going back to that big leagues analogy, but like Victoria was what I was training a long time for to make sure I nailed it. And thank goodness I did. And she was very supportive.
Well, awesome. Walk us into your career. So you get out of Princeton, you did Dartmouth, but walk us into your career a little bit, and kind of, up to Outrider. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, a lot of boring stuff, and I don't want to bore you or your readers, but there were some interesting, transition or inflection points in my career that are fun to talk about and don't make you kind of your eyes glaze over. But the first one was a pretty interesting one. So I was a history major and in undergrad, and it was because, I was partially inspired by my mom, and learning about just great sort of historical, events, and more important, the transformations and the characters and the circumstances that brought them about. But I spent most of my concentration on authoritarian and totalitarian government.
Okay.
And of course, in the mid 90s, you could not sort of avoid the headlines and sort of the news being generated by Russia and its,
Right.
recent emergence from communism. And, communism ended in 91.
Mhm.
And then throughout the 90s, that country was just going through a massive upheaval and transformation. And while I was writing my senior thesis on sort of youth indoctrination methods in World War II from of the totalitarian governments, I couldn't help but just pick up The Economist and read about Russia and what was going on there. And I just thought, I need to be in Russia. I need to, I need to check it out. And, really quick sidebar, I guess I had always thought I'd go into business, which is, overly broad, very vague thing, but just like be, not government, not a doctor,
yeah,
all sorts of things. But I just knew I wanted to be in business. Like there's interesting things to do in business, but I also had this adventurous streak. I was very independent. I was fiercely independent from a very young age, and wanted to kind of strike out on my own path and get adventure. And I somehow wanted to blend personal excitement with professional growth.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Long story short, so that's the setup. Right after college, packed a duffel bag, got a few contacts from like my high school and college alumni networks, and got on a Aeroflot flight from San Francisco to Moscow.
Wow.
And all I knew was there's a lot of stuff going on here and I want to be part of it. And long story short, I got introduced to a guy who his name was Tom Reed, great guy, but got into Russia, right after the sort of the onset of the capitalist era then in the early 90s, and was successful and was like the founder of Gold's Gym Russia.
Oh, really?
In Moscow. And I ended up meeting him at that Gold's Gym, and there's a racquetball court there, and he asked me to play racquetball. But I ended up working.
He spoke English?
Spoke English, but he was working for one of like the oligarch of Russia at the time. And
okay.
I joined this merchant bank there and was a financial analyst working on all sorts of deals in media and telecommunications for this oligarch who was amassing his sort of industrial and media empire.
So you were working for his company then as a finance guy, basically?
Yeah, worked for this bank, and I was the American.
Were you living like in some little apartment? Like, I mean, I'm trying to visualize this. Are you like in downtown, or like, where are you?
So I am in VDNH, is the name of the metro station in Moscow, and I lived in a little flat, and I took the Moscow subway into work every day and spoke Russian, not great, but passingly well.
Oh.
And I was this just bright-eyed. I was the bright-eyed, just eating the whole world through all my senses kid who was just like, I am living this amazing life on this wacky adventure. Kind of got myself into a banking financial analyst job working to help this oligarch build his empire.
Pretty cool.
So exciting. It was go, like whatever you read about Russia in the 90s, the cliche saying Old West, I can almost guarantee they were understatements.
Really?
It was absolutely wild there.
And
exciting because there were all sorts of investors, entrepreneurs, bankers, capitalists, like all over the world converging on Russia into Moscow to help. It was like a startup country at that point. We talk about startup companies, but this was a startup country.
All right. So you're doing this, you're working for this guy. Okay. And then what happened?
Well, there was the ruble crisis and there was the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s, which more or less kind of shut down all the go-go activity in emerging markets, and engineered my transition back to the US. Ended up at a venture firm called Palo Alto Ventures.
So there you go.
Getting,
That's how. Okay, now you're in a venture firm. All right, all
yeah,
right.
and
Yep.
this was the effectively the corporate VC arm of Philips Electronics, and so and I
Okay.
kind of came back with this really exciting, and this, there might be some lessons here, but I remember coming back from Russia. I'd wanted to stay in Russia for years and really get into it. It wasn't really in the cards, not a fluent Russian speaker and not a, established sort of banker. So I came back to the US with like all this excitement and sort of momentum, and got that job. And that was my first job really, in the US at least, because I was doing some of this in Russia, but evaluating, technology driven, media communications companies for, that Philips Electronics wanted to invest in.
And
And
then what
that's what,
happened? You only stayed for a couple of years. So somebody recruited you away. Me recruited you away.
well,
What
I
happened?
joined, and then I joined my first real venture-backed startup. And this was my formative, really, an early career defining,
Moment. Yep.
professional choice.
Yep.
Joined a company called Mahi Networks, which was building
Oh,
this astounding, marvel of communications and networking technology. But more or less, it's, networking and telecom technology is largely, driven by innovations in switching and routing, which are things that are just kind of the underlying infrastructure of the modern world. But Mahi Networks was building this, piece of equipment, it's basically just a giant computer, that's with very specialized software focused on getting, bits and bytes, in and out of metro areas and transporting them on long distances.
was that your first? Was that your first kind of scary move? Scary move, like, oh, small startup, like, oh boy, I don't know if this is gonna make
It
it.
was it was an exciting startup at the time. There was, people talk about the dot-com boom. There was also the telecom boom back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and this build out of the telecom infrastructure, and Mahi Networks was certainly playing a big part in that and developing, a very innovative product. But it was, the company, when I joined the company, it was about 150 employees.
Okay.
They were backed by Sequoia Capital.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Capital, Goldman Sachs. I mean,
Okay.
just a who's who of, investor roster.
I see.
And I was the young sort of commercial in the commercial, part of that company, and kind of had a variety of roles in, product marketing, corporate marketing, product management, business development, and spent 4 years there. Helped build the business to a really great set of early customers, and left before it sold, but spent, that was my formative experience going into like building startups.
Okay.
Learned from just really wonderful mentors, including a guy named Ron Longo, who was the VP of worldwide marketing, who I think about today, because a lot of what I learned at Mahi, which is, it's a hardware and software integrated system. There are a lot of analogs to, today at Outrider with a robotic system, which, has a lot of the same kind of parallels to a switch or a router, except it's on wheels rather than being, sitting in a central office somewhere. So learned a heck of a lot about building companies and, building for growth.
And you also, from a functional perspective, now you're started in finance with numbers, but now you're bleeding into sales and ops, and you're getting well-rounded with sales and ops as functionally, which is eventually shaping you to be like a COO, because now you can do all three, right? You know the numbers, you're good at ops, you're good at sales. Is that where that started shaping a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, learning from a lot of our careers are defined by experiences and not just sort of the knowledge and skills we bring in. And the experience of building a very fast growing, very promising technology company. And it's exciting to do it. And it's exciting, and especially when you're working with brilliant, charismatic, experienced people.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me realize I love this. I love building a company, and,
Gotcha.
we all love building successful companies. You want to focus on that, but, building an absolute machine, with the company surrounding the, sort of the machine, the product.
Mm-hmm.
But it was incredibly exciting. I supported multiple financings and, product launches, and just got, exposed to a lot of the core functions of building, a high growth technology driven company. And yes, you're right. The numeracy and the sort of the qualitative sides of, all the human stuff you deal with and judgment and decision making on that, as well as tying it to, how you make the business work, the numbers part of it was a big part of it.
No big payout for you though on that, because you left before. Okay. So that no giant check for Bob at that point. Not yet. Anyway.
No. And I was, like startups do, I got, I spent a lot of my sort of personal and professional bandwidth on that company. And I wanted to really invest in my career and invest in my sort of skills and growth. And so applied to business school and got into Tuck and had a wonderful experience there. And of the many things that I got to do at Tuck, one of them was meet Andrew Smith, who was my classmate at Dartmouth and founder CEO of Outrider.
Oh, I see. That's so you guys met there. Okay. Did he have the idea there? You guys like having beers and he's like, hey man, I got this idea. I'm going to do this.
No, Andrew and I had different sort of interests and focus areas at school. We always seemed to see eye to eye on just generally like cool business ideas or things to do and markets, but we also really connected on, the extracurricular stuff. So we spent a lot of time outdoors, mountain biking, trail running, hiking up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and in the Himalayas and other places where we went. But, he started his first company at Dartmouth, which was a trailer aerodynamics business. And he spent 9 years building that and sold it and basically got a crash course in the supply chain, in freight transportation, i.e. 18-wheelers and trucking. And that's his exposure to what was going on in the sort of the distribution hubs of the modern supply chain, i.e., like trailer yards and everything, really sparked the idea that for Outrider. I went in a different direction after Dartmouth. He was focused on grinding out the success of his startup. I went into private equity and joined a firm called Summit Partners, which was just a fantastic platform. I mean, a world-class business and very successful investors, but spent 2 years there evaluating investments in high growth technology companies. And that sort of like brought back, really kind of cemented my sort of love of working with high growth companies and innovative companies. And was sort of the investing counterpart to my time before Dartmouth, working in a startup in commercial roles.
And then you went on to do a couple more. You went on to do a couple more things, but now you're full blown startup, VC world, early business. Yep. You're in love with it. You're in that world. This is where you're at. Yeah.
I love being on a mission. I love building companies from the inside. Certainly it's fun to invest money in promising businesses and being on the outside, but I get a thrill from building the company and really, the day-to-day decision-making of where to focus effort and energy. I just didn't, as much as Summit was just a phenomenal institution for understanding evaluating and analyzing businesses from the outside. I wanted to be on the inside and joined a company that I had met and learned a lot more about when I was at Summit, a company called Yumi, which was in the like marketing technology space that, I helped. I was one of many people there, but helped it grow to a successful business and an IPO. And
IPO, is that a cash? Is that a payday for Bob? Is that the first big payday?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it put some money in the pocket. It wasn't anything where, I don't want to brag about it because I was one of many people working very hard.
Understood. Yeah, I understood. And IPO'd, and then what? You take off and you do this Radium One for a little bit.
Joined Radium One, and that was the first time where I was going to a more, a company that, had, serious revenue scale and an interesting, focus for me. And I joined as head of business development and then became the chief strategy officer, but I was responsible for a set of analytics tools for major brands to understand, what their users and fans and consumers were doing online across multiple different channels, like your desktop and your mobile phone and social. So I got a chance to really kind of help steer the product roadmap and the execution for this set of, web analytics, subscription-based tools, and sort of built on my background at UME, where, focused on web services and, enterprise grade platforms. And that's kind of, in that experience, we ended up, Radium One ended up getting acquired, and I helped the CEO and the executive team.
Okay, great. More awesome experience. Yep.
Yeah. So affected the successful sale or acquisition of the company. And when I left Radium One, I felt like, I'd spent 10 years post-Summit partner, 10-ish years post-Summit partners, building, software as a service and web services businesses. And really loved it. I love the intricacy and complexity of marketing technology and marketing automation, but I wanted to step back and think, could I apply what I've learned, all these experiences, to a new opportunity? So I took a self-imposed, 6-month break to do personal stuff and explore, some other personal passions that I have. And
were you married? Were you married when you did the 6-month thing, or no?
Yeah, I was married, had Vivian, our first child. She was there. I spent some time on the East Coast. I pursued some, athletic, sports
Nice.
passions of mine.
Triathlons, any of that?
I used to do triathlons. I got into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu
Really?
after business school, and a little bit before business school, but really got into it after business school. And I had been doing endurance sports that you do, there's one motion and you do it repetitively for a long time. So rowing, swimming. I ended up doing triathlons and marathons after college, but I wanted something, exciting and different, like that used your mind and used sort of, had a lot of variety in sort of like the workout. And I wanted to try a martial art. I'd never done one in my whole life, and asked a bunch of friends who did martial arts. And I said, if you did any martial art, if you could just do your whole career over again, what would you pick? And every single person said Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Do you still train? Do you still go? You still are still active?
I've been training. Yeah, I am. I still identify myself. That is my sport. I have taken a almost 2-year break because of COVID. I made an agreement with Victoria that I wouldn't, because it is a very personal enterprise, fighting and sparring and grappling. COVID is not good for families with unvaccinated children. So this Pfizer news last night, like that the FDA may approve a young vaccination for kids under the age of 5, is great news, because it means I can see, when I can get back on the mat and train.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that's a side thing.
Nice to know if we're ever out at happy hour and shit's going down. I'll stand next to you so you can take care of whoever's causing problems.
I got your back.
So what happens? Does Andrew call you? He's like, "Hey man, come help me do this," or what? Tell me how it happened.
Yeah, Andrew Smith is a fusion reactor of energy. I mean, he is just full of just overwhelming positive entrepreneurial energy and focus. And we reconnect. I mean, we were good friends and did a lot of stuff for years after college together, but hadn't connected with him in a few months. And he calls me up and he says, "Got this great idea. I want to automate these trucks that, are in charge of moving trailers at these distribution centers. And it's a robotics problem. So it's driverless or autonomous trucks, but we want to build, I really have this vision for building a subscription-based or SaaS model around it. And you know something about that, don't you, Bob?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm okay. Like, pretty, have a good working knowledge of how that works and the dynamics. And he said, well, help me out. Like, help me just kind of think about the business and package it a little bit, and maybe help with fundraising. And I got into all the different aspects of the business right when he was forming it, right after he had hired some of the key, early, very senior, very experienced veteran engineers in the Denver area. And he said, help me with, kind of asked me to help with a bunch of the business stuff, recruiting, customer work, fundraising, some product strategy stuff. And I just dove in and could not believe the cliche, the product market fit that I had seen whenever we spoke with customers or investors or roboticists. But I got involved in all these aspects of the business, and long story short, I mean, you didn't ask this, but I just could not get over how good the traction was with the business. Okay. Everyone I spoke with said, oh, really smart application of autonomy. That makes a lot of sense. That's something that, isn't going to take decades to commercialize. And I just thought, okay, business is in Denver. It's not, robotics is not, my background, but I do have a lot of background in building growth companies and helping, really kind of communicate value. Yeah. And I thought,
plus Andrew, you guys know each other, which I think is so important. Yep.
I know Andrew, know him well, respect him like crazy, and really love that kind of that absolutely contagious entrepreneurial energy, which is just so essential when you're building hard to build things.
Yes.
And I thought, this is really, this is one of those things where I'm sort of experiencing it, and then I'm sort of witnessing outside my body, witnessing me experiencing it. And I'm like, this is the kind of thing I've been searching for my whole career. Something where it is the time for this thing to be built. Like, now is the time. Everyone is thinking, oh my gosh, what a great idea. I want to join. I want to sign up. I would love to try your product. I'm interested in potentially investing in this kind of business. And I had just never seen that type of rapid sort of endorsement of an early idea. And I'm like, I need to do this. I need to join. I just need to get over it. My discomfort that it's really early stage. Because sometimes, like, you have a stage you join at, like, sometimes really early and sometimes really late is not the right thing for people. But I was like, this is
because
raw.
you joined way pre-revenue, right? I mean, this was
a month after the company,
Yeah.
There's the legal formation, but then, it took a few months, but like about a month after, like, people actually got hired to start working on the business, Andrew pulled me in. I was a consultant because I was like, I don't know, like, I'll check it out. And I was doing some other consulting. And that's when I started this revelation. I'm just like, I just have never seen this kind of, as the term product market fit. Overwhelming. I was like, I got to do it. And I was in San Francisco. The business is in Denver. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. But Denver seemed like a really promising, cool area. I didn't have a ton of close friends here, but got really excited about it and made a change.
Give us the 3-minute overview of Rider. I say 3 minute. Just give us the elevator pitch of Outrider. For people who don't know what we're talking about. And by the way, for the listeners, it is outrider.ai, autonomous yard operations. Give us the 3-minute elevator pitch, if you don't mind. Go for it.
You don't really want me to talk for 3 minutes straight, do you? The fantastic business. So we are delivering autonomous yard operations, and just for the uninitiated, Outrider is focusing on a pervasive and absolutely critical link in the modern supply chain called distribution yards. And the distribution yard is really it's a parking lot where trailers, 18-wheeler trailers. So when you see a trailer getting pulled down the highway, oftentimes it stops at a major, warehouse or a fulfillment center and gets dropped off. And, the trailer yard is where trailers are parked and they are moved to enable the process of getting freight between the warehouse or the, fulfillment center, distribution center, and the road. And that the trailer yard is kind of like the switching hub of trailers get dropped off by Joe or Jenny trucker, and then these specialized industrial vehicles called yard trucks, which are really just kind of miniature versions of the big rigs you see pulling trailers down the highway. These specialized trucks are in charge of moving trailers from, say a parking spot to a loading dock, or, an unloading dock to a parking spot. And a trailer will typically get, after it enters the yard or the distribution hub, will get moved anywhere from 4 to 8 times in its stay before, from the point it gets, like, an empty trailer still has, empty crates or cardboard boxes in it that get removed by workers inside the warehouse. And then it gets filled up with freight, depending on the business and what's in the warehouse. Workers use forklifts or other means to get freight in the trailer. But what Outrider is doing is automating everything that happens in that trailer yard or that distribution yard. And so everything a truck driver who drives these vehicles would do. And that's not just driving the trailer once it's attached to the tractor. And that just quick terminology. When you see an 18-wheeler, it consists of the tractor and the trailer, and the tractor is the thing that pulls the trailer. But we are automating the movement of that tractor trailer combination, as well as all of these intricate, very precise movements that are today performed by humans, like the connection and disconnection of the brake line that attaches the tractor and trailer. Little known fact, the trailer is just a 10,000 pound paperweight unless you disengage the brake line on that trailer. So every time you see a tractor pulling a trailer, the brake, the air line from the tractor disengages those brakes so that it can move around. So we are doing that robotically. But Outrider is developing a 3-part system to automate this link in the supply chain. It's, all the kit that makes all the hardware that goes on one of those trucks that allows it to control the brakes and the steering and the actuation, to see all of the, environmental data around it through sensors like cameras and LiDAR, and then plan for how to, perform a route. It consists of that piece. It consists of some IoT, some very low cost, straightforward stuff that we put at that customer site. And then it consists of the actual web-based software that allows humans to, like a command and control interface, to task and manage all of the autonomous trucks that will be operating in their distribution yard. So it's
the business model. So the business model, I think, is a yard purchases the truck or the unit. I don't know what you call it, 1 or 2 tractors.
Yep.
And that's a one-time purchase for that. Yep. And then they subscribe to a monthly SaaS service to use the software. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's a couple of low cost, so upfront one-time investments in some straightforward hardware, and then the business really centers around the ongoing subscription service of access to the software. So it's a classic SaaS model. Access to the software that controls the robotic truck, that whole stack I was just mentioning, as well as the application software to control it. So, as we develop the, improvements in the performance and functionality of the software that controls the truck and all of its sort of intricate maneuvers, that customers benefit from that, that ongoing improvement in software performance. And so it's a subscription based service. And instead of paying, drivers every month, you pay the robotic service. And the reason that this has such a great, sort of relationship with the modern labor market, I think it is very hard for the large enterprises that we service. So the biggest retailers, the biggest package delivery companies, the biggest consumer packaged goods companies, many of these are our current customers. They cannot find people that want to drive these trucks. And when they find them, they often can't keep them long enough because those people are using this job as a stepping stone to other things. So it has a really good, relationship with the labor problem of the supply chain and the logistics network now. And it promises to make the yard, which is an area, this complex area with a lot of interactions, make it safer, make it more efficient, and make it cleaner. Because Steve, one of the biggest things that biggest business model bets we made is that we are only automating electric truck platforms.
Okay.
We are not automating, like we had a choice of, outfitting these trucks, which we work with the manufacturers directly to configure them for autonomy. We had a choice to automate internal combustion engine or diesel trucks. This is absolutely not in the mission of this company. The mission of the company is to be the stewards of, responsible stewards of automation and autonomy technology, and also to advance the deployment and adoption of zero emission vehicle platforms, i.e. electric vehicles or electric trucks. So these are twin business model objectives of the company to, decarbonize or reduce the carbon footprint of our highly consumptive economy, where everyone wants things same day or next day, and that extracts a toll on our environment, but also doing it in a way that's precise, clean, safe, and efficient, and using the best sort of off the shelf and our own proprietary technologies for autonomy. So those are the goals of the company.
Okay, very good. At this point now, it's just charge forward and sign new clients and put trucks in more yards. I mean, you're there, right? You have the trucks, you have the software, and now you're just signing clients. Charge forward.
In really good shape. We have the system itself does the job and does it well of moving, finding the trailer, it has to move, connecting to it, moving it across the yard, dropping it off. So yeah, we're always going to be investing in improvements of the system, but you're right. It is getting, working with our existing customers, which are very, very large, many in the Fortune 50, but also getting new clients and really building not just the company and the product, but the entire product category. We feel like we are the folks who are, designing a new way for the modern supply chain to work, focusing first on this key. Again, it is a critical and pervasive link in the modern supply chain, and starting from there, and have some exciting plans for how the business expands and branches out over time.
I know we're almost up against our hour here. I'd like to ask you a couple more questions. Do you have a hard stop in 2 minutes?
I have all the time you would like to have me for. So,
okay. If we can extend just a little bit here, I know we're going over. Let me ask you this now. Give us an idea of how big the company is so far. Like, do you have a truck in every Amazon yard? Do you where are we at? I know it's a private company, but how far down the road are you? Yeah, go ahead.
So some, I guess, a couple data points to just give you a sense of the size and stage we're in. So about 160 employees, more than 2/3 of which are engineers, because that is the big, effort of the company, is designing brand new software for this application. We've raised $118 million in venture capital in total across 3 rounds, and have some absolute world-class investors who really believe in the long-term vision of automating yards, and autonomous yard automation, but also the company itself. We have a number of, all of our customers are in the Fortune 500 or that size. And
can you name them? Can you tell me? Amazon, or can you go into detail or no?
I can. We have one publicly announced customer, and that's Georgia Pacific, and they're a fantastic partner and customer. That's the only one. There's 10 more that are we characterize as sort of our early partner customers. And the process right now that we're undergoing is we've got a great system and an overall service offering that sort of centers on this this driverless truck. Customers have seen it. Many have seen it operating in a live operational context at their distribution yards.
And in those yards, you probably still have some human beings moving some stuff around in combination with your unit. And is that what's happening?
Yeah. So when, there are yards come in all shapes and sizes. There are yards that, there's not even a dedicated yard truck that moves trailers around because they're just small. We focus on large enterprises. So again, the biggest retailers, package shippers, consumer packaged goods companies, where their distribution hubs typically work around the clock, 24/7, 365. Right. And not only are they working constantly, but there are the amount of freight and in the form of freight in trailers, but the number of trailers moving on and off the lot is so large that there are multiple of these yard trucks needed to just keep trailers moving and freight moving between the warehouse and the road. So when we work with a customer, we engage in a really sort of deep, consultative dialogue with them to understand their operations, their freight throughput. And if there's a yard, yards can range from, like I said, no yard truck to over 100 yard trucks maneuvering constantly just to keep trailers or containers moving. So let's just say a typical, a customer with 5 trucks in their distribution yard, 5 yard trucks. So we'll lay out a plan that says, one by one, there will be, as one yard truck in service gets sunsetted or end of life, as they say, it's kind of reached its the end of its usable life. They will introduce an Outrider autonomous vehicle, or AV, to sort of take over that job. And one by one, because automation, you have to make sure you do it right, and it's safe, and you establish the right boundaries, physical or geographic boundaries within the yard, but also all the the specific maneuvers that the AV needs to perform. We actually engage in this planning process with customers so that they can map out when and how autonomous vehicles are introduced into the yard one by one, so that you go from a fully manually operated yard to a fully automated yard. And that's one of the real major appeals of Outrider, is that we've designed this system to work with how the world works today, and all the operational constraints and rules and guidelines and input output of freight, to design, this is a standard product, but we configure it in a couple ways to work with our customers' operations. What's
the penetration rate so far? I mean, I'm assuming you have a general idea of how many yard trucks are in the United States, and how many of those are yours so far, and can you give me any?
We're really, we're really starting to dial up the sort of the commercial scaling process and really the sales motion. But I will say there's a more or less 50,000 yard trucks operating in North America on a daily basis today. Our current roster of customers represents 20% of that total, that installed.
I see. All right.
So we have a number of absolutely massive customers whose their logistics network and dotting the United States and Mexico and North America represent all the yard trucks combined of all our customers is a little over 20%, or 1/5.
Is it speed to market now, or you're just? I guess my question is from a sales perspective. If you've got 20%. Is it now?
We don't have 20% market. I want to make clear, we don't have 20% market share. Our customers represent 20%.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't want to overstate.
Are you now stuck in the situation where you have orders for 200 more trucks and you can't get them built, or you're just still trying to penetrate more customers, or both?
We could stop acquiring new customers right now and build a fabulously successful, financially successful, and successful in the product sense business. So that said, we really want to service. We don't feel like we will have completed our mission to both introduce sustainable, freight transportation, as well as introduce automation, until we are automating, every last yard. Well, at least every last yard where people want automation.
Oh,
and it makes
okay.
sense.
Let me ask you this question. I know some of these might be outside the lines, but what keeps FedEx and Amazon, like, aren't they? I mean, if I was head of Amazon, like if I was Bezos, I'd be like, okay, well, I would just tell my guys to go build an automated vehicle, or I would just buy Outrider.
Yeah, we have a ton of, if I were, don't know what they're thinking, but yeah, they have a ton of respect for Amazon because we all read the press about how well run that business is and how innovative they are. And certainly supply chain technology is a big part of
Oh,
how
yeah.
they build a
Yes.
competitive advantage. I don't know what their plans are, but certainly they are a company that a lot of other businesses that are logistics dependent. They're a company that a lot of others follow the lead of.
Is that the goal for you guys to have FedEx or somebody call you and just buy the company? Is that the exit plan?
By the company, we want to make sure if we ever get into that discussion about who's going to own the company, whether it's an acquirer or the public markets, a public listing, we want to make sure we are well down the path and we are, where our, it's one milestone on the path to getting our mission accomplished. So that's far in the future, but today we want to make sure that every major enterprise that has, is a key participant in the modern supply chain is considering not just yard automation broadly or autonomous yard operations, but Outrider specifically as the key, the leader and the most cost-effective, the safest, the cleanest solution to automate their yards.
How about this? Who's in control of the cap table? Do you have one VC company that has invested enough to be quote in charge?
No, but we take all the guidance and suggestions of our investors really seriously, and it's a terrific group. The leads of the 3 rounds of funding that we've raised, New Enterprise Associates or NEA led our seed round, 8 VC, the number 8, and then VC, a terrific, investment fund based out of San Francisco with a focus on logistics and transportation, or at least an emphasis there, led our Series A, and then Coke Disruptive Technologies, the venture fund of the Coke
I see.
Industrial conglomerate, led our Series B round, and they've all bring a variety of perspectives from early stage tech investors to big company technology adopters and early technology adopters for big companies. Have just represented a variety of perspectives that have been terrific for building the company and making the wisest judgments about how to reach our full potential as quickly as possible.
That was a smooth answer, Bob. They're very good. I just got 3 more. I know we're over. I just want to ask you like 3 more.
Yeah.
Do you get to help Andrew with the phone calls from investors and board members when they're like, hey, what about this? What about that? Does Andrew do all that, or do you help him with some of those?
Andrew and I work very closely on that. I mean, he's the CEO and founder and he's in charge, but we've got a great working relationship on discussing the business fundamentals and where we need to go, as well as, the tactics. And yes, I'm involved in board discussions and in all of our fundraising activity.
Okay. 2 outside the lines questions. These are totally outside the lines.
Bring
now.
it.
Get ready. You can tell me, we can cut it out later if you want me to.
Yeah.
COVID, masks, vaccinations. I know a lot of CEOs and COOs are struggling with what to do internally. Everybody's watching the news. There's a whole Biden thing, the Supreme Court deal. Everybody's kind of like standing on the sidelines going, ooh. What have you guys done with employee rules, and what's your future plan?
We need to keep the best interests of our employees and the business in mind. And so you're right. There's way more debate about this than there should be, I think, but this is not a political issue. This is purely, number one is keeping our employees safe and all the constituents, not just employees, but the people who interact with our company. including, when we're at customer sites and our customers, but it's keeping employees safe. And it is making sure that Outrider is able to reach its full potential. And there are no schedule or other impediments to doing that. And let me just kind of decompose that a little bit. To us, this is a safety issue. Like I think the virus is changing. And so the people who are affected, thankfully, a lot of them are not getting hospitalized, and much less so, resulting in death or serious impairment. But we've got people of all persuasions at Outrider, young and old, all different colors, political affiliations, military service, gender identity and sexual orientation. And we can't pick sides. All we need, bottom line, we need to make sure everyone is safe and can keep their families safe. And we strongly encourage people to take the precautions if they can, if their physical, profile, their health profile, and their beliefs allow them to. But we strongly encourage that. And what I rely on is not that, Biden says this, or, when Trump was president, Trump said that. It's not about that. We have a job to do. We have really important work to do at this company. And if COVID takes people out and they can't show up to either design trucks and driverless trucks, or assemble them, build them or test them, we really have a major sort of company issue. And this is about keeping the business moving and making sure we can accomplish our mission. This is not about anything other than, keeping people safe and moving forward aggressively with our business plan.
Should CEOs and COOs and CFOs, should they be on social media speaking out on hot topics and taking sides and doing that?
That's such a terrific question. And I think about it. I think about what responsibility do I have to acknowledge, merely acknowledge hot topic issues, and moreover participate in those, and use my own personal voice, or work, use my voice as equivalent to the company's voice. And we make to me, an ample enough statement about our intent to improve the world by focusing on, our mission, which again, I probably said it way too many times, but, sustainable freight transportation tech and automation. And those are issues that to some people are social issues. To us, they are business and real world, big picture issues. I don't feel like anyone really cares about my opinion about a social or a political trend. I'm not sure it helps the conversation, or that I have the time to devote to really nurture it. If we build this company, I feel like that will be the biggest positive impact we can have on the fortunes of American business, as well as, ecologically, the climate that we all live in. So that's kind of a silent statement or position, if you will.
Very good, my friend. Great interview. Last question. And by the way, congratulations on your entire career, your wonderful family, and what you've done with Andrew and the team over at Outrider. Congrats. Really awesome resume and experience so far. And appreciate you sharing your story. Last question. If you could put your core purpose in life right now into a sentence, and let's do this. Let's separate your two young children and your wife. Let's set that kind of aside. That we kind of know, that's the special core purpose, right? Family. Aside from family, how would you describe Bob Hall's core purpose in life?
Aggressive, purposeful, focused execution. I don't want to leave you hanging for 5 minutes as I came up with what it was, but I think of that, those things really sort of pervade all, my personal ambitions and my own personal growth and development, my family, and how I, what I want to accomplish with my family and the experiences that we want to have. And then, my mission here at Outrider, building this business. that it is having conviction and building up an understanding of problems to be solved and having conviction, and then going after tackling those problems with just unbridled sort of passion and aggression, and in the positive way, like attacking the problems, to make sure that we're living our best lives, and living out the best chapter in our careers and personal lives right now, as well as doing something that has tangible sort of impact, and something where we can really kind of draw a straight line to the world happened, turned out this way, and here is the impact Outrider had on it. So that's what
Bob
gets me
Hall,
there.
thank you very much for being on the Riderflex podcast. I really appreciate it, sir.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks a ton, Steve.